Barrett Maddox never expected to find smoke rising from the chimney of his abandoned ranch. He'd bought the property 6 weeks ago, sight unseen. The deed was clean, the papers signed. The land was supposed to be empty, but as he rode up the winding path that October morning, he smelled fresh bread. He heard women's laughter. 4 horses stood in a corral he had never built. A garden stretched where only weeds should have grown. Someone was living here. The sound of his boots on the porch brought sudden silence. He pushed open the front door he knew should have been locked. The main room glowed with warmth. 4 women stood frozen near the kitchen, their faces a mixture of defiance and fear. They didn't apologize. They didn't look ashamed. They just watched him. But before we start our story, make sure you smash that like button, subscribe if you haven't, and hit that notification bell so you won't miss any new stories. Barrett felt the deed crinkle in his jacket pocket. These were not the desperate drifters he might have expected. Their clothes were simple but clean and well-mended. They carried themselves with a dignity that felt out of place. But what struck him most was their position. They stood shoulder to shoulder, a practiced, defensive line between him and a door to the back rooms. They were protecting something. He took a step toward the protected doorway. All 4 women moved as one to block his path. His anger began to rise. This was his land. He had paid good money for it, and now he was being treated like an intruder. He opened his mouth to tell them he wanted to know what they were hiding. He noticed the old bruises on one woman's wrists, quickly hidden by her sleeves. He saw the hard calluses on another's elegant, slender fingers. The eldest, Grace, finally spoke. She confirmed they knew who he was. They knew he was the new owner. They knew he'd bought the place from Harold Wickham and that he'd been back east on business. The admission sent a chill through him. They had been watching, learning his patterns, preparing for this exact moment. His fury overrode his curiosity. This was trespassing. He told them so, his voice rising, giving them 1 hour to gather their belongings and leave. A sound stopped him cold. It was soft, barely audible, but unmistakable. The cry of a baby. Barrett's anger evaporated, replaced by a complex, stunning shock. He watched the women's faces. The defiance wavered. One woman's eyes filled with tears. Grace's composure finally cracked. "Now you understand," she whispered, "why we cannot simply leave." A baby changed everything. This wasn't just trespassing. This was a sanctuary. He pushed past their defensive line before they could stop him. The back room had been transformed into a nursery. A young woman, Ruby, stood beside a makeshift crib, holding an infant no more than 6 months old. The baby's features suggested a mixed heritage, and in that moment, Barrett began to understand. He didn't need to hear the full stories to see their outlines. He saw it in Ruby, a woman cast out by a cruel husband who would deny his own child. He saw it in Violet, the elegant one, whose posture spoke of a better life she had lost. He saw it in Grace, the intelligent leader, a woman who had clearly been in charge before. He learned their stories, one by one. Each was a quiet tragedy of displacement. Ruby, thrown out by her husband, accused of infidelity, and denied shelter even by the local church. Violet, Harold Wickham's own daughter-in-law, blamed for her husband's riding accident and given 3 days to leave the family land. And Grace, the former school teacher, fired by a new preacher who found her age inappropriate. 4 women, systematically displaced by the men who held power over their lives. They had found each other. They had created a new family from the wreckage. Barrett looked around the room, truly seeing it for the first time. They had repaired the roof, cleared the well, planted a garden. They hadn't just occupied his property, they had restored it, increasing its value significantly. He walked back into the main room, his mind reeling. Legally, he owed them nothing. Morally, how could he force a baby and these women out into the wilderness in October? Just as he was struggling with this impossible choice, the sound of approaching horses broke the afternoon quiet. The women exchanged a practiced, panicked glance. Grace moved to the window and peered through the curtain. Her face went pale. "It's Harold Wickham," she said, her voice a terrified whisper. "And he's brought the sheriff with him." The women tensed. They had clearly prepared for this. Ruby vanished into the back room with the baby. Violet moved to the rear entrance, calculating escape routes. Grace stood near Barrett, a solid, steady presence. But Cora, the one with the challenging green eyes, remained perfectly still, her gaze fixed on the door with a chilling intensity. A heavy knock echoed through the room like a gunshot. Barrett opened it. Harold Wickham, a man used to being obeyed, pushed past him without invitation. His eyes swept the transformed room, his face dark with rage. The sheriff, a heavy-set man, and 3 others filled the doorway behind him. Wickham announced he'd come as soon as his foreman saw the smoke. He pointed a trembling finger at his own daughter-in-law, Violet. He accused her of being a manipulative creature, of stealing what she thought she deserved. She shot back that his son, her husband, had died because Wickham gave him a horse he knew was too wild. The sheriff stepped forward, his bulk filling the room. He stated the facts. Mr. Wickham claimed they were trespassing, squatting here illegally. Barrett felt the weight of the moment. He looked at Grace. He thought of the baby hidden in the back room. He felt Cora's presence nearby. Legally, Wickham was right. Morally, it was far more complex. Barrett made a choice. He told the sheriff the women were not squatters. They were his guests. The lie hung in the air. Relief washed over the women's faces. Wickham's face turned a darker shade of purple. He sneered. How could they be guests? Barrett had been gone for weeks. Barrett doubled down on the lie, claiming he'd hired them to maintain the property. The sheriff shifted uncomfortably, his hand resting on his holstered weapon. If they were employees, he'd need to see an employment agreement. Barrett felt a jolt of panic. He had no documents. He had just cornered himself. But before he could speak, Cora stepped forward. Her voice was cold, carrying a tone Barrett hadn't heard before. She was surprised, she said, that Mr. Wickham didn't recognize her. Wickham's face went pale. Barrett saw recognition dawn in the older man's eyes, followed immediately by pure fear. He breathed a name. Cora Langley. I thought you were dead. Cora replied that she was very much alive, no thanks to his efforts. The sheriff's posture straightened. He asked if she was related to Judge Langley from the territorial court. Cora confirmed the judge was her father. Wickham's confidence was cracking. He stammered that his death was an accident. Cora's voice was like ice. Her father didn't die in an accident. He was murdered. Murdered because he had discovered Wickham's land fraud scheme and refused to be bought. And, she added, she had the proof. The silence was absolute. Wickham lunged for her, but Sheriff Thompson, no longer a passive observer, stepped between them. His hand was now on his handcuffs. He asked to see the proof. Cora handed him a small, worn leather journal. She calmly directed him to page 43 for the forged land grants and page 67 for the list of bribed officials. As the sheriff flipped through the pages, Wickham's 3 men exchanged nervous glances, then backed out the door, abandoning their employer. The sheriff looked up, his expression grim. He confirmed the journal detailed years of criminal activity. Wickham, now completely cornered, spat that no one would believe the ramblings of a bitter daughter. Cora quietly informed him that 3 of the men named in the journal had already confessed. Barrett finally understood. Cora hadn't just been hiding. She had been building a case. This ranch was her refuge while she gathered the evidence to destroy her father's killer. The sheriff closed the journal. He placed Harold Wickham under arrest for land fraud, bribery, and suspicion of murder. The sound of hoofbeats faded, leaving a stunned quiet. Cora finally sank into a chair, the tension leaving her body. Grace's practical voice broke the silence, asking what happened now. The question was clearly for Barrett. He looked at the 4 women who had turned his empty, derelict property into a home. He looked at Cora. "You're welcome to stay," he said, the words feeling both spontaneous and inevitable. "All of you. This place is better with you here than it ever was empty." Tears of relief streamed down Violet's face. Grace nodded, satisfied. Cora looked at him, a new warmth in her green eyes. She asked if he was certain. They had no money for rent. Barrett moved closer. He told her they had already paid their rent by making this place a home. And as for their character, what he'd witnessed today told him everything he needed to know. He then added one condition. He'd like to court her properly, if she was willing. Her smile was answer enough.